Welcome to another episode of On This Day on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for On This Day, Mike Goodpaster, and today we're going to talk about December the 11th, 1981. And we're going to talk about Muhammad Ali and the drama in the Bahamas. It was the final fight in the legendary career of the greatest of all time, as he was self-proclaimed Muhammad Ali. Ali had previously, a little over a year before that, had lost in an ill-fated attempt to take Larry Holmes' WBC heavyweight championship. Ali looked terrible in the fight, even though he weighed in at 217 pounds. He had a thyroid condition. A lot of stuff went on there with the doctors and everything that, wasn't on the up and up. Ali looked bad, had a hard time even landing a punch against Holmes, and Holmes basically battered him for 10 rounds before the fight was stopped by Ali's corner. Now, prior to this fight against Trevor Berbick, and Berbick was not just a normal heavyweight, he was a guy who was ranked in the top 10. He'd went 15 rounds, a competitive 15 rounds with the champion Larry Holmes much earlier in the year of 1981. And Ali proclaimed before the fight that he had been declared fit even by the best white doctors. Nevertheless, the venue for the fight, Nassau in the Bahamas, was chosen because no American state would grant Ali a boxing license after his performance in the match with Larry Holmes. The promoter of the fight was James Cornelius, a convicted felon with links to the Nation of Islam. However, a problem arose since Don King had signed Trevor Berbick to a 3-fight deal after Berbick had given Larry Holmes such a rough fight earlier in the year. When King arrived in Nassau to demand his share of the profits from the fight, he was greeted by 2 friends of Cornelius who administered a sound beating to King. He deserved that because he's not, if you know anything about boxing, you know about Don King. I'll just leave it at that. Now, Ali's weight just before and during the fight was 236 pounds. One reporter described Ali as the Michelin Man. Ticket sales for the fight were slow. So slow that the promoters ended up offering them at a heavy discount, even selling them at McDonald's leading up to the fight. Fewer than 7,500 people witnessed this fight. There was no pay-per-view television, no American network had even made a bid. However, On TV aired the fight, airing in Cincinnati, Ohio. The great thing about that was, I lived in southeastern Indiana. We had On TV. On TV was kind of a precursor to cable where I lived, where you had this one channel. It would run in the evenings from 7 o'clock to about midnight, and it did show sporting events. It showed Indiana basketball games, Kentucky games, Notre Dame games. It showed fights. It's how, I think this was the second fight that we'd seen on TV, because actually Holmes and Ali was carried on TV. We were actually able to watch it in our own home, I think for like $10. And then later on, I got to see Holmes Cooney this way for $15 in 1982. Now, the fight took place in the unfinished Queen Elizabeth Sports Center. When people arrived to see the fight, they found that they could not get in because the key to the main gate had been misplaced. When the key was found, it was discovered there was no boxing gloves at the venue. There was also no bell to signal the end of a round. Ultimately, a hastily procured cowbell had to be used for the purpose of, letting people know when the rounds were over or when they started. And, because of the paucity, the lack of paying spectators, Berbick refused on the day to fight unless he was paid up front. Now, the fight did start, but it started 2 hours behind schedule. And in the early rounds, Ali tried putting together some combinations, but these proved ineffectual, and he was pushed back to the ropes by the bigger, stronger Berbick. In the 5th round, Ali landed some solid jabs, and then put a right-left-right combination on Berbick. But by the 6th round, Ali had tired and had started getting hit. By the last round, Ali was completely exhausted, and sports writer Hugh McIlvanney, who witnessed the fight, wrote, "Berbick is the kind of lumbering, slow-arm swinger Ali would have first embarrassed and then demolished in his dazzling prime. To see Ali lose to such a moderate fighter in such a grubby context was like watching a king riding into permanent exile in the back of a garbage truck. The one blessing was that he was steadily exhausted rather than violently hurt by the experience." Now, to me, the more impressive thing here, the biggest thing was not the fight. It was what happened after the fight at the next morning's post-fight press conference, where Ali, who was a living legend, had come to realize that Father Time was not unbeatable like he thought he was. And, he did it not with sadness or misgiving, but in a way a man rids himself of a burden that can only be felt by a man of 39 years and 49 weeks who had been swapping punches with people for more than 2/3 of his life. I've been doing this since I was 12, Ali said during the final morning press conference after the fight, in a room on the third floor of a hotel in the Bahamas. He said, "It's a joy and a relief to know that it's over." It had ended 11 hours earlier. It was a mundane climax to a chaotic week of build-ups, letdowns, and the primitive atmosphere of a local baseball field losing a 10-round decision to Trevor Berbick. Ali had backed himself into the final corner, providing inescapable evidence that his legend was alive in memory only. That Saturday morning, dressed in a black pinstriped suit, he shamelessly admitted that was so. But he also showed why all the reigning champions of his profession, and all the champions to this day, no matter how hard they tried to imitate him, will forever be in Ali's shadow. Yes, Ali said he had lost the fight, even though his closest admirers still tried to tell him he had not. No, Ali said, he had nothing to blame but his age, not lack of preparation as he did in his first 3 losses, and not the thyroid medication he said sapped his strength in the loss 13, 14 months earlier to Larry Holmes. "I have no excuses this time," he said. "I was in shape. My weight, 236.5, was all right. I had 10 rounds to do what I wanted to do, and I didn't do it. There were things I wanted to do, but I couldn't make myself do them anymore. But let me ask you this, did I take a beating?" Ali, in fact, didn't take a beating. His only blemish that morning was a small red welt above his left eye, and he was proud of that fact, just as he was proud he was able in his mind to escape the fight with his image unbattered. "I'm happy because I'm still nice looking," Ali said. "I could have been laid out on the canvas for all of you to take pictures of me. I could have had a black eye this morning and a split lip and a broken teeth. I thought I looked good for an old man." Ali knew he had little left. His last great performance, he admitted, was against George Foreman in the jungles of Zaire in 1974. His last good fight, he said, was the second one with Leon Spinks in the Superdome in 1978, when he became the first man to ever reclaim the heavyweight title 3 times. All he wanted was to summon the resources to win 2 more fights, one over Berbick, and then WBC champion Mike Weaver, and retire a 4-time champion. But no matter how well he fought for a man near 40, Ali knew also he looked bad. No matter what any of his sympathizers tried to say, Saturday he looked the awful truth square in the eye and did not blink. When someone reminded Berbick of his post-fight admission of feeling sorry for Ali and letting up to avoid embarrassing his idol, Ali turned to Berbick and said, "If you could have done better, but you didn't, thank you." When someone asked Berbick if Ali had taught him anything, Ali broke in and said, "I taught him to retire before the age of 40. And when someone asked Ali if perhaps his slow start wasn't a decoy to fool Berbick, he said, "No. I was doing my best. I was just slow." The Muhammad Ali of tomorrow will not be a shadowy figure around boxing gyms. You could tell that just by listening to him talk at the post-fight press conference. And when you look at Ali's post-career, he didn't do exhibitions. And he said in that conference, "They're too hard because people want me to put on a show, and I just can't put on a show anymore." He never wanted to be a manager. He never wanted to become a politician because, as he said in that post-fight press conference, run for president? I don't want to get shot. And the thing that was great about Ali is Ali made an impact. I mean, if you look at the Iranian hostage crisis, the things that happened in the Middle East, Ali was always there to try to help out. And he said he wanted to do prestigious stuff after he retired, and until he couldn't anymore later on in his life because of Parkinson's and all the other health issues he had, he did. And he said that morning that his image or his mission is to remove racial images from the church. He said the white Jesus, the white Mary, the white angels. And he said that he didn't like that because he believed it brainwashed people. There should be no race, he said. The race and power makes the images to be like themselves. Miss America is white, Tarzan is white, Superman is white, Batman is white, Wonder Woman is white. It messes up everybody's minds. A lot of people tried to copy Ali's style in the ring. Guys like Greg Page, even Larry Holmes. Nobody could copy him. And the thing that was funny about the press conference was that Trevor Berbick, when he finally gets to talk, his first comments were, "I'm a child of the universe." Ali whispered to him, "Hey, that's heavy," with a huge touch of sarcasm as he giggled. But Ali is serious. Ali said that boxing was a stepping stone, a way to make enough money and influence enough people so that they will listen to him when he talks. He accomplished that a long time before that night against Trevor Berbick. He said that nobody should feel remorse for him because he lost a boxing match. He says, "My real victory is with God. It's not whether I please man or sports writers or boxing commissions. My real happiness is in pleasing God. I'm happy I had a good life in boxing. One thing that isn't bad about losing is that people feel inferior to you if you're too good. People can see I'm human now. I have more fans now. I showed I'm human. I lost. We're all going to have hate in our lives. We're all going to have success. And we're all going to have failure, even me. We all have had days, and we have all had bad days and good days." He said, "I lost to Frazier. I wasn't grieving. I lost to Norton. I wasn't grieving. I lost to Spinks. I wasn't grieving. I lost to Holmes. I wasn't grieving, and I'm not grieving now. And after a few days, this will just be old news and fade away." The great thing about Muhammad Ali was not that he was a great fighter. It was that he was a man that stood up for his convictions. The Vietnam War. Ali shed a lot of light that maybe the United States being involved in Vietnam was not a good idea. And he stood up for that. And whether you agree with a person or not, a person that will stand up for what they truly believe in and will not back down is what we all should aspire to be. Now, after that night in the Bahamas, Ali would joke about coming back, but he never really considered it. And, once he turned to Berbick towards the end of the press conference and he said, "I'll get you next time." He spotted heavyweight contender Ronaldo Snipes in the back of the room and he shouted, "I want Snipes." And later he warned, "I don't know how I'll feel next month." But next month, Ali felt the same as he did the month after that and the month after that. He was a little older, a little heavier, and he knew it. And at long last, he admitted it. And at the end of the press conference, he screamed, "I shall return." Then he paused, and he said, "To Los Angeles, California." So on this day, December the 11th, 1981, the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali, also known as Cassius Clay, fought his last fight in Nassau, Bahamas, in a quickly built boxing ring in a park. It's not the way you would think he would go out, but he was a man that affected so many people, rich and poor, that it didn't matter how he went out. It mattered how he lived. So on this day, December 11th, 1981, Muhammad Ali loses his final fight to Trevor Berbick. I want to remind everybody you can hear On This Day every day on thegruelingtruth.com. Make sure you go check it out. You can follow us on Twitter at Grueling Truth. And you can hear us on every podcasting forum out there, including iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for my good pastor, you've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.